Today I'm going to talk about Apple's first woman board member and Steve Jobs' last two board searches. Now, I had started working for Apple in 1988, right around 19. It could have been 87, 88, 89, somewhere in that period of time. And we were able to land the first strategic account at Apple, where we did all of their mid-level work and high-level work, though it never went into the C-suite. I think they may have done one, like a CFO search or something like that, that we didn't get in the period of time that we worked with Apple. But it saved us in the first recession. We were hurting. In the first year, we got it was $575,000. In fact, it was in the Wall Street Journal as being something dumb that Apple should not have done. It's just to hire one search firm for all the work that we did. And we were building the mid-level hardware engineering teams. We eventually also built their Pink group, which was considered their main software work. And it's actually, the Pink group is the group that, if you ever watched the movie, one of the movies was about Steve Jobs, it's the one where Steve's yelling at Bill Gates for stealing their operating system and supposedly being the platform for Windows. And that was the Pink group that we built. Roger Heinen was the head of that group, who ended up going with most of his team to Microsoft. We had built that team for Roger. So that's when we started back at that time. And it was, I think Steve was only there for a short time. I never met him at that point. And John Scully was the CEO. I remember seeing John, I must have been in my 30s, early 30s, and I was sitting in one of the offices, and he came in with an entourage into the reception area where I was. And I was, oh my gosh, that's John, the CEO of the company, John Scully. But a few years later, when Steve had returned, actually about 10 years later, when Steve returned, I had the opportunity to call Steve at exactly the right moment when I believe the board was about to hire another firm. I like to think that Steve recognized that I was one of the top search people in the world, and I was the best person to conduct this board search. But I don't think that was it. I think actually it was the fact that he wanted to hire someone before the board did, so that he can get done what he wanted to do on the board. And it was later to find out, when I met with Steve, that there was a conflict between the board and Steve's objectives for the board. And so I don't even think we talked about price. At the time, board searches were somewhere in the $25,000 to $50,000 range, or probably at the lower end of that. They had not gotten to the point where they are today. And I immediately set up a time to meet with Steve. I actually was planning on going out there that week. This was after I had done the CEO search for Hewlett-Packard, and I had a lot of work going on. We were doing all of Cisco's work at the time, and I think we were also doing all of Adobe's work at the time. So I had a lot of, I was going back and forth. I'd leave on a Sunday night and come back on a Friday night from Cleveland to San Francisco or San Jose and back again. And when we met, I started to do what all of us search people do, and that's to get a very crisp picture of where the board is now, where Steve wanted it to go, what needed augmenting, what skills did not exist. Steve wanted a CEO from a top technology company, but it couldn't be in software, personal computing, and it couldn't be in telecommunications. That really only left the semiconductor business and aerospace and defense. And the board wanted Apple's first woman to be on the board. And there really wasn't any reason that I could see that there should not have been someone already. They were really kind of behind the times at that point, at least for a fast-growth Silicon Valley company. It's obviously much different today and going in the right direction. So I found myself in that first meeting with Steve telling me what the challenge was and really what the conflict was between he and the board. So I tried my best to be a good, sounding board, and also someone that was going to push back. And no matter what I said, Steve came back to me that it wasn't going to work. I tried saying that, well, don't you want to have a board that reflects your marketplace? Wouldn't it be great to have a woman on the board that could see products in a different way? could be involved in kind of, well, from their view, what design might be best. And that didn't work. He said to me, I don't care if it's a dog, a rock, a man or a woman, I'm going to hire the best board member that I want at the time, right now, for what I need them for. And this went on. I ended up talking to several of the board members at the time and getting their perspective. And they coached me, and I ended up having 3 or 4 meetings over the next 2 months in kind of the real intensive part of the search on trying to have Steve be at least open to meeting candidates that were winning. And we were able to present, we finally got down to 2 of the best candidates that he liked. One was Ron Sugar, probably one of the best CEOs in America at the time, and probably maybe the best CEO ever in aerospace and defense. He was the CEO of Northrop Grumman at the time. And Andrea Young, the CEO of Avon. What Steve ended up doing, however, was hiring Al Gore and as his next board member, which came out of nowhere. I had no idea he was even interviewing Al Gore. And the reason that was because he had a plan. Steve had a vision. He knew what he needed. None of us knew. The board didn't even know at the time that the real reason that it was the problems that Steve anticipated in manufacturing overseas and some of the regulatory problems and governmental problems that he had, that Al Gore ended up helping Apple navigate quite well. But he was not able to share that with me. He ended up bringing both Ron Sugar and Andrea Young onto the board a few months after bringing on Al Gore. And I also, getting to know Steve at that time was something that I look back on and I really cherish, because I got an understanding of who he was. He, for whatever reason, we would, even after the search was completed, we would be able to get together. He'd allow me to visit with him every now and then. And he never, I was always trying to find some value that I could bring to the dialogue. And he never took any of my advice from the entire time that I knew him. In fact, he was the only CEO that didn't listen to me. But I watched and I listened, and I watched how he interacted with others. Occasionally, people would come in and ask a question, and I was able to glean just little bits and pieces of his personality that I still remember today. In fact, many of us that knew Steve still remember him sitting in his office when he came back to the company. And he was usually in a T-shirt and shorts. And that's how I remember him today, as if he's never left that office. And a lot of us still think he's still there. Not think he's there, but kind of remember him that way. And I miss what we would maybe have seen from him in terms of what new technologies. I think the whole technology landscape would be different. He certainly saw technology applications in the future. And certainly the launching of the iPhone and of iTunes and getting into the entertainment business were huge strategic wins for Apple. To move from a company that when we first started working with them, I think the stock was somewhere down to $3 a share. I never bought any either. That was a big mistake. But they were known as the best computer manufacturer for the education market. And that was pretty much it. They hadn't broken in to the consumer market in the way anywhere near where they are today. But Steve had a vision of where the company was going. He'd obviously bought Pixar and sold it to Disney, and he knew the entertainment business incredibly well. In fact, before he got back to Apple, he was the CEO of Next. And Next became, much of the technology that's still there was technology that was created and innovated way back when he was CEO of Next. Next actually was such a great name because that was like the next Apple computer. It was Next. And so I miss him. Everyone else misses him. But I cherish the fact that I won that search and that we were able to bring in Apple's first woman board member. And the company has changed a lot. I can't say that it pivoted and changed at that particular moment, but it's different. And it's not a better board because without Steve, it's not the same board. It's not ever going to have that same excitement and surprise of new innovation and technology that it had back then. Today, it's not. It's a very innovative company, but built on a platform that Steve started. So what was that next platform going to be? And I'm always going to be curious about what he would be doing today and what new things we would be experiencing in our lives. Maybe we would each have personal robots. Maybe that's what it would be. Who knows? But we won't find out. But thank you much for listening to me today.